there are some places like, I don't know, London or Paris where people generally don't leave. And then you have other places like Van Horn where they don't come back. So, first thing, let me introduce myself again. I'm Jason. Give me your name.
Maribel.
Maribel. And
Brian.
Brian, you look like a husband?
Pseudo-husband.
Pseudo-husband. Okay, this is David. And I met you at the radio station, I think,
Correct.
a couple hours ago.
Yes.
And you're leaving tomorrow.
Correct.
And you've been here for a couple days?
Almost a week.
Almost a week,
Yeah.
which brings up this point. Why are you here?
I came here to see my family,
Uh-huh.
to visit with them, my parents,
Right.
primarily, because they're at an age where traveling, interestingly enough, is not something that they ever cultivated in their awareness when I lived here. So they're dependent on their sons and daughters to come and visit them, which I'm fine with that. Now that this town is doing what it's doing, it's a little bit more of a...
What are your parents' names? Do I know them maybe?
They're Wenceslao Martinez and Cuca Martinez.
Huh.
You may not. They're somewhat
I
keep
may
to themselves.
know them by face,
Yes.
not by name. And so you said what this town is doing. I assume you mean the town is changing, right?
Oh, tremendously, yeah.
Tell me what it was like. When did you leave?
I left around 1982, 83.
Wild. Okay. Well,
After a few years after high school. Yeah.
so tell me, just in a thumbnail, what was Marfa 1982 like, and what do you think Marfa 2011 is like?
I can't explain it in words. The diversity of people that are here is such a switch.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I have come back to visit and I walk around town, I'm connected to the streets, the buildings. Some of the buildings, a lot of the other buildings where artists live now are so different.
Yeah.
And the people walking around the streets are different, the majority of them. And some of the older folks that are residents from here don't even remember me. And I'm not expecting them to remember me.
Uh-huh.
So there's a middle ground where they're the newcomers, like you guys, making a living here that's
Yeah.
of interest to me. And then the old comers that don't remember that I was part of this community. So I can walk around town and be a stranger
Yeah.
in the
I'd say.
town where I grew up, which that's pretty cool to me. It's interesting.
Why did you leave?
I left, I think, for the same reason that many young people leave their towns or cities,
Yeah.
to search what's out there.
There's an attraction of what's out there, but was there any disincentive to stay here? Did you think, well, it's too small, it's too old, not enough jobs? Those are the kind of the conventional reasons for getting out of a small
That
town.
might be the mindset of young people. High school, when you're in high school, you
Yeah.
have that conversation, that mindset that as soon as I'm out of high school, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
So in your eagerness to leave, you may not see what's actually available here.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I left in that eagerness. One, curiosity. I'm curious about what's out there in the rest of the world. How do they live? And knowing that I would have to.
And yet you're in Idaho. Like, if I had to think about visiting and seeing the world, I don't know that I would go from Marfa to Idaho. I'm sure there was stuff in between.
Oh yeah, there was plenty of other places in between.
Mm-hmm.
But that was primarily why I left, to go see what's out there.
Mm-hmm. And what did you think? Bear in mind that all three of us are here because we're seeing what's out there too.
Right, from the other spectrum.
Right.
I know you mentioned you're from Los Angeles.
That's right.
I haven't asked David or
I grew up in Miami, Florida.
okay.
Caitlin.
And Caitlin, where?
I grew up in Buffalo, New York,
So
and Austin, Texas.
that's amazing to me that
Yeah.
you guys are doing the flip side of what I was seeking when I was younger.
Though, in all fairness, I don't know that I would have been as attracted to Marfa 1982 as I am to Marfa 2011.
Right. I don't think that you would have, because it didn't have the same artistic flavor that it does now.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about that a bit. So, I think, was it 1982-ish that Marfa was getting its artistic flavor?
It was starting to get more of the Shanati Foundation was more surfacing and becoming a conversation of what is it, where do you find these buildings. It was starting to become that.
Yeah.
To me, it was just someone that I knew. He was just someone who was part of our community.
And who's that?
Judd.
Yeah. And Did you know him personally or see him
I
around
had
personally?
seen him around town,
Yeah.
knew his kids when they came to visit him.
Mm-hmm.
But it was never out of, oh, you're a great artist. I actually didn't even know until I was ironically, in college. I got a fine arts degree in the University of Montana in Missoula. And then I realized what he had actually done here.
But that seems to me, I've heard this before from people who've been here a long time, almost more than a coincidence, that here, this is a town, I mean, you got a fine arts degree, that's what I'm referring to. It does seem like this town produces people who are interested in art more than Van Horn does, even more than Fort Davis does, even if you were here in the 80s or even the 60s, long before Donald Judd.
Right, but I wouldn't directly say that it was because of what I knew of him.
No. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's okay.
So,
I
yeah,
guess
it's kind
I
of
guess I'm
odd
saying
that
it is a coincidence, but it seems like I talk to people who grew up.
in the air.
Yeah, it's in the air.
Yeah, it's in the air.
Do you know
Yes.
Cecilia Thompson? Boyer?
Celia's a historian. Gosh, she would have been friends with May Quick, probably, who was teaching in the school. She's older. She's in her 80s. Cecilia's probably 85. She got her PhD in history, and she wrote the 2-volume history of Marfa that was, in print for a while, and then had been out print for like many decades. And yeah.
She says her overarching theory about Marfa is that it's had this DNA of artsiness since like the 1890s.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Way back.
Where does that come from, though?
I don't know.
You know what?
Well,
the
I'll tell
only,
you what she
the
says.
only reason I'm going to agree with you on that, or to some degree on what might have happened, is when I was a kid and I grew up on a ranch just 19 miles out of here towards Presidio. I didn't know who Donald Judd was. So all through grade school, I didn't know this artist. But something about his ceramic sculptures outside of town, as we drove in and out of town on the school bus, I would see them, and I had a sense of comfort, and I couldn't stop staring at them.
Yeah.
And I always would question, not knowing, my parents are not into art, what are they? But there was something pleasing about them, that they were constantly there when I came into town, when I left town. I always, and it took me years to realize that was part of his enclave of art.
You got your master's?
No, not a master's.
Bachelor's?
Yeah.
I'm sure there was a time, maybe even right now, that you do art at home, or
I do tinker.
Yeah, is it anything like what we associate Marfa with? Kind of that simplest expressionism? I guess minimalism is the word.
It did. Yeah, a lot of my work was very minimalist.
Huh.
Yeah.
When you saw those are you talking about the concrete boxes?
Yes, the concrete.
Did you know they were art, or?
No,
I
I didn't.
didn't.
I was in grade school, but there was something pleasing about them, and I would constantly look at them. And when I got older, I would go and play around them and hide in them. There was something incredibly nurturing to me to see those. Maybe not to others who don't, but it was to me, and it was years after that.
They've grown on me, and that actually makes me suspicious of myself. Just to think that any art can grow on me, because that shows that I'm more susceptible to what others think and say than I'd like to believe. And Cecilia Thompson had this, or has this idea, that the first people to come to Marfa, settlers or cowboys and ranchers, tried to get educated wives. They imported their wives from the bigger cities, college educated, and she believes that planted the seeds of certain actual snobbiness at the time that grew into artsiness. And there was a polo team here in the 1920s, and there were more movie theaters here than other places, and what have you.
Yeah, there are photographs of the Marfa Women's Historical Society or whatever. That's not the correct title, but pictures of these women, frontier women, but dressed up and buying. There was stores here where the woman who owned the store was importing fashion from different places, and these women working together and talking about they were a historical society, and there are photographs in Cecilia's book of these women, of these wives of the military men in town.
My theory is, backed by nothing except my own experience, is that people who came here must have had the same feeling 100 years ago that I have now, which is that it's a place that kind of inspires you in terms of like its skyline, its weird lighting, its humongous streets and really symmetrical architecture. It has what's the guy? Is it Hopper?
Edward Hopper.
Yeah, sometimes at night it has that kind of loneliness to it, just because the buildings are so solid. And one time I was here and it was like 3 degrees outside, and there was no one on the street. All the windows were shut. All the houses were completely dark, and I was just like, trying to get home, like completely bundled up. And I just remember thinking, like, this town is so much tougher than all the people here. Like, everyone else just wants to escape inside, but the town just looked exactly the same. Looked really pretty. So.
Yeah, it's true.
So tell me, what do you think? You're here at Padres. There was nothing like this when you left town, right?
No, this was a funeral home.
Huh.
I saw dead bodies in here. My friends.
Right. Well, that might happen again.
Not in a bad way.
Yeah, I understand.
You know, in Mexican culture, they lay the body out and you see them.
Moving a little bit past the funerals, where would you go? I mean, if you were a teenager, you had to hang out somewhere. People's houses, and,
Yeah, not unlike other small town teenagers. People's houses and driving back and forth around the streets, making trouble.
Mm-hmm. Was there a police force here?
Yeah, sheriff's department. I think they were fairly lenient. We could get away with.
Because obviously, you see now we have an overdose of police.
Yeah, I do notice that. Maybe you guys are more troublemakers than we were.
No, I think it's just...
No, I'm just joking.
My mom is from Mexico City, and when she came to the United States, there was no such thing as a border. I mean, there was a border, and you saw it in books, because it's a line in the sand. But that's all it was.
Yeah. So my family's also from Mexico, so for me, that even the whole thing is surreal. Even how this town has flipped from one economic cultural base to a different one is surreal. You go to the border, that is surreal. The people that are from just across the river, different way of living, different way of living their lives, and then you come here, you get away from Presidio and you get to Marfa. That's like, where am I? It's surreal. And you can ask someone who's not from this area, doesn't know much about Texas, how sometimes for him it feels so surreal, the shift, the energy.
Yeah.
You've got a bunch of different worlds colliding.
Yeah, that's for
in
sure.
Marfa on various levels.
And there's this nice, I feel it's kind of an interesting tension between the elders who have lived here and have were dependent on what they could eke out a living, to how you guys, the new people coming in, living here and trying to figure out how's my art going to work with this landscape, which is, by the way, I think very supportive. The landscape itself can lend itself to expressionism, whether it's in writing or visual arts.
So you're happy with the changes? And before, let me tell you, we're all product. I came here because of Padres, a place I now try to avoid, but I do go to the radio station a lot. She works at the bookstore.
I work for Judd Foundation.
Oh, she works. Okay, I associate with the bookstore. She works for Judd Foundation. He's here because of Chinati. So I guess when you were a little girl, none of us would have had any of these reasons to be here at all.
No.
Are you happy with the changes?
Oh yeah. I think it's interesting.
Hey guys.
How you doing? Do you have any memories of the military here?
No. Other than a few.
Yeah, but what
They would have left.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. The only one story that was ever present is the train facilitated the movement of the military being here because it was they could easily bring supplies in and out, people in and out. It gave them access to the cities for the families, right? So they weren't as isolated.
That's a huge
But,
change.
you know.
I mean, Judd's the block was the quartermaster's compound, and the quartermaster was in charge of.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, in charge of the maintenance and mechanics, and so the buildings of the block, the hangars were open, and so machinery would be repaired there and then go onto the train.
Yes.
And then go out. So like both for people, passenger trains and also military trains. materials and supplies. And
Yeah.
Did the train ever stop here while you were growing up?
No.
Uh-huh.
Mm-mm.
I'll tell you what, let's wrap up. I don't want to
Yeah.
keep you too long, but you got any questions? Do you have any questions for us? Oh, the last question. What do you think it is that attracts other people not yourself, here?
Different publications that are out now, the access to the internet, because there's more stories that connect different little towns with what does it have to offer for travel guides, right? For artistic. I was shocked when I was in college. I opened up architectural magazine, and they had a story on some of the buildings here. So I think different writers that come into this community and have something to share, and it shows up in magazines.
How does Coeur d'Alene, is that it?
Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
How does Coeur d'Alene compare?
Well, he's a native, so he may be better to answer.
It's a tourist.
Is it
It
in the
was,
Rockies?
it was a town to this one in that it originated as a central trading hub, and it was then primarily once trading sort of dried up, it became an area that was very resource rich, and so the local economy was driven by lumber, mining, and farming. What the largest silver producing mines in the world at the time were found in North Idaho. So it was a huge economic engine for that area. And it, if you're familiar at all with the Northwest, there were more trees than you could count up there. And so for the people moving in that area, it seemed like the opportunities were endless to log for generations. Of course, we determined that that's not the case. But so for a long time, resource extraction drove the economy. But it's a beautiful area. There's a multitude of very large lakes. It's surrounded by pristine forest, mountains. And so it drew, much like this place, it's a very dramatic landscape. And so people come through there and fall in love with the views and the landscapes, and they're drawn to it. What it doesn't have is the mystical aspect that this place has.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is unique about the Southwest, and this place in particular, is there's a mystical aspect to it. You can feel it, and when you go outside at night, it's magical here. That's what I noticed.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily feel that. I mean, I can feel that get that kind of feeling when you go up into a hike into the wilderness, and you're sitting on top of a rock in the middle of the mountains, and you can't see anything but stars and a beautiful lake below you. It's mystical.
You're right. That's totally different.
But yet
it's
this
different than
place,
this.
it's that
Yeah.
mystical feeling's accessible. I mean, the town is on the edge of an abyss,
right.
right? So you can walk right out your door and get that feeling.
Right.
Whereas in most places, you walk outside and you're surrounded by the chaos of civilization. You guys have a very unique and very special place here, because it has all the desirable attributes of culture, in that you've got access to art, you've got access to good food, good music, the kind of people that you want to surround yourself with, and yet you're out in the middle of nowhere. It's very unique.
Tell me your name again.
Brian.
Brian. Okay, Maribel, you want the last word? Are we going to see you again? Are you going to come back and visit?
Oh, I will come back, definitely.
Do you have family here?
Yes, my parents are here.
Your parents are here.
And then
Okay.
across the border are some more family.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why one of the reasons I come back. I more eagerly return now, because there's this stuff that you guys are doing.
What did your parents do here?
My father was in ranching.
Okay.
He worked in ranching for many years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, I really could talk to you for more, but let's end it here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Brian, Caitlin, who I associate with something that is not her job. By the way, I mean, I associate myself with Padres in the radio station. I don't work at either of these places. No, I'm harder than 1%. No, I'm not. And David. So thanks, everyone.